as we started to allude to and promised to explain in the last episode, central to the question of Pantheism and Kabbalah, of the correct way to understand the relationship between God and world, is the Kabbalistic theory of emanation, the great chain of being, the Seder Hishtalshelut of the Kabbalists. An idea, or rather a schema of reality, that will be familiar to anyone who studied Neoplatonism or the Muslim and Christian mystical traditions which were influenced by her. The schema, according to the Kabbalists, runs something like this. All that fundamentally exists was and is the one beyond number, the one without limit, the holy blessed one, the sacred, salient, the real, the one which must exist, the one which cannot not exist, the one which is being itself and beyond being, the one which is the ground of being, without which there could be no being, the one from which all else flows. The one, metaphorically at some point, desires to create. Metaphorically because the one is beyond space, time, and desire. Yet within the literature of the mystics, we find various anthropomorphizations given to explain and understand this moment that precipitates creation, or emanation from the one. God, the one, was lonely, wanted to see, to know itself, to be known, was full and had to overflow, was good and needed an other to do good with, or God just wanted. Why? No questions asked. Whatever the reason given or not given, the mechanism by which the one bifurcates, multiplies, and creates the many, the world, the illusion of separation and otherness, generally runs something like this. The one flows, shines, emanates from itself, its light, life, energy, which over a course of descent, gradations, and degradations gradually becomes more and more coarse, fragmented, and thickened, progressively or degressively embodied, invested, and enclosed in the metaphor of matter, in the signifier of material. According to the cosmologists, the Kabbalists, in the very first moments, something inscrutable shatters into barely perceivable or even conceivable particles of existence, which begin to metastasize and multiply, gain mass and thicken, bending the amorphous boundaries of reality, defining space, time, motion, and light in the process. Light then thickens into vessels, just as protons into neutrons, neutrons into electrons, into crystalline double helixes, molecules and waves, chrysalids and butterflies, into Akudim, Nikudim, and Brudim, Oisius and Tavis, Urius and Kalim, Sphirot, Partsufim, and Olamot, sunshine and rainbows. All said and done, in the top end of the metaphysical funnel goes the one, and out the other end of the spectrum pops out the universe, reality as we know it. The problem, though, with this otherwise simple to understand ontology, is the question that plagues all metaphysics of mysticism. God and world, the one and the many, are fundamentally and categorically incommensurate, incomparable, and the gap between them utterly unbridgeable, because their difference is not one of degree but of kind, and of kinds that share no class, genus, or set. This is what we might call the strong emergence problem for the emanationists. And while many will be sufficiently distracted by the bells and whistles of the Kabbalists' great chain of being, and many will get lost among the upper worlds of Seder Hishtalshelut, somewhere between the Siluk and Parsa, between Atzilus and Asiya, Za and Nukva, the more persistent observer will not let this metaphysical sleight of hand slide by. If we begin with God and end with world, at some point along the chain there must lie the impossible quantum qualitative leap over the infinite gap dividing them. In the language of the Kabbalists, at one point there must be Ma'atzil, the emanator, and at the next moment Ne'atzal, emanated, and the step between them, as teeny as you'd like to portray it, to hide it, must happen if you believe that both God and the world exist, but cannot happen without first surrendering the fundamental, inalienable, very Kabbalistic definitions of those two words. This, in short, is the problem of Seder Hishtalshelut, the problem for which it was created and the problem which it cannot, but must solve. Having said that, the Kabbalists' attempt to answer this indissoluble question takes the shape of bringing a metaphoric microscope to the metaphoric middleless link in the chain of being, to the point where the divine touches the mundane, where the sacred meets the profane, where God ends and the world begins. Where exactly this X point is becomes a matter of vociferous debate amongst the Kabbalists, and even identifying it is only half the solution. We then have to figure out how the transition happens, how the emanator passes the torch over the unbridgeable chasm to the emanated. And just in case you think this metaphysical magnifying is an inane medieval activity which we can thankfully abandon with the advent of modernity, I'd like to suggest that this is very much still a real question, and one that possesses the best minds of modern poets, artists, novelists, philosophers, therapists, and in near form, scientists and mathematicians today. Because this question does not just pertain to the cosmological structure of reality, but also, and equally so, to the human psyche. Where does my true being end? The part of me which loves without reason, has patience and forgives endlessly. That part of me which is innocent and blissful, where and why does that end, and my everyday, selfish, impatient, tired, jealous, and petty self begin? Where does God end, and the void within the self begin? Where does the infinite end, and the finite begin, and how? This question, writ large, projected onto the ceiling of the cosmos, is, I believe, the question of the Kabbalists. Their art is psychology made simultaneously external and internal, so that the self can be examined at a safe distance, with room for perspective, experimentation, collaboration, and corroboration, the science of the soul. This is theology as projected psychology. This is also where the question of the Kabbalist pantheism, by the way, rests. In this crack between God and world, how deep, the Kabbalists want to know, does the face of divinity go into the mask of materiality? And how far back does the hand of materiality go into the glove of divinity? I hope that wasn't too much theology for one sitting. We spoke about the meaning of Seder Hishtalshelut, of the Great Chain of Being, what metaphysical problem it comes to try and resolve, its implications for our own states of consciousness and psychology. But if you have any questions, comments, feedback, or appreciation, make sure to pop down into the comments. We love hearing back from you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for watching. Thank you once again to our patrons who generously support this project over here. And as always, keep seeking.